All right, so check it out. Look, if it's your first time hanging out on a live chat, this is my little slice of YouTube, but I'm doing a little thing, doing a little bit different with the live show. Been working on this bike for a hot minute. I think my mind is gone, but I'm bringing y'all along for the ride. It's winter time. It's about 28 degrees outside. Can't really go riding. So what I'm doing is I'm working on the GSXR 600 and I'm bringing you guys along with me, mainly to chronicle what all's going on with this bike. Now, if you guys are super new to the channel, the GSXR 600 is the latest addition to the fleet. We've got a couple of GSXR 750s, GSXR 1000, and a few others, but primarily talking about the GSXR 600 because this bike has just absolutely glued itself to my heart. I've got a thing for GSXR middleweights, and man, I gotta tell you, this one definitely tugging at my heartstrings. So since it's gross outside, we can't really do anything outside of just getting the thing ready for more modifications. I'm chronicling this bike because it does have so much history. I've got 22 pages floating around here somewhere of history on this bike, and so I figured I would walk you guys through a little bit about what I have been going on about with this thing, verifying settings and all of that kind of good stuff, and also a couple of fun facts along the way. So let me check in with you guys real quick, and then I'm going to get to work and then talk to you guys. Armac is in saying what's up. It's cold as shit here, freaking cold. Yeah, so I'll tell you what, it is chilly, 28 degrees I think as of last check, and it's been kind of nasty. It was raining last night. It's really pretty day today, but can't really go riding without a windscreen, and we're pulling the mirrors off of this thing and basically getting it ready for its new windscreen, some mirror block offs, and well, just basically cleaning the thing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a beverage of brewing and grab something to drink, and so you guys hang out just a second while I am getting this, and then we're going to go over some of the things that I've been doing, getting this bike onboarded, because in a way it's really not even done with that process yet. And a lot of that has to do with, and what I wanted to talk to you guys about is this ongoing thing with, when you get a bike, right? Especially now because it's wintertime and it's kind of gross outside. People are getting rid of bikes. You can usually get a really sweet deal. Well, now's the time to get that bike, but you're going to have to put a little bit of sweat equity into it. So what I'm going to do, grab me something to drink, because I'm a little bit thirsty. So I can keep from tripping over all a bunch of stuff in here. Let me check in with you guys real quick. Let's see. Cam said he's got 6 inches of snow. That's a lot. Bruce said we're finally above zero here. Feels like a warm -10. Ooh, comfy. Deedle's asking, what's wrong with the stock windscreen? Absolutely nothing is wrong with the stock windscreen, but unfortunately, the previous owner had mounted a camera mount to the stock windscreen, and it's the double-sided tape that doesn't ever come off of there. So we've got a zero gravity windscreen coming, and so that's what's going to go on the bike. But nothing's wrong with the stock windscreen. I actually like stock windscreen. But if I'm taking one part off, I'm probably going to be replacing it with an aftermarket or an upgrade or something like that. But in the meantime, now's a good opportunity to talk about the onboarding procedure if you did find yourself with a great deal on a used bike. Don't forget, this is the opportunity to go ahead and get the bike cleaned up, give it a really solid once over. Don't be afraid to pull the thing apart. They're easy to take apart and put back together. That's the good thing about these kind of bikes. But the main thing you want to look for is routing, cable routing, hose routing, things like that. When other folks are in there working on a bike, a lot of times things can get a little bit astray, right? Like, a cable is going in the wrong direction, and, hoses are going in a weird spot. But you also get just the dust accumulation. Stuff just builds up over time. And what you want to do is address that, which is what I am doing with this bike as I am pulling it apart, getting it ready for the mirror block offs, and just trying to get this thing cleaned up, because this bike had sat for a long time. And the problem is when they sit, a bike that sits, it's almost worse than a bike with a lot of miles. Somebody had asked in a previous live show, do you ever worry about mileage when it comes to a motorcycle? And the short answer to that is, it depends. So if the bike has been well maintained and that bike has a long history of being enjoyed out in the world, and it's had a history behind it with either service, or the guy that's selling it to you can talk you through everything that's been done, because most of the time the guys are pretty animated about how much work they put into the bike, what they've done, their suspension setups, and all that kind of good stuff. So if you have an enthusiastic seller that can walk you through that part of your bike, then chances are that's going to be a pretty good one. And what's weird too, a lot of times the bikes that have a ton of miles on them, then they run good. They run better really than they should, I guess. But just remember, I'm gonna have to get one of my tools to get this thing off of here. But just remember that it's not the mileage, and it's really not even the type of miles. It's how hard was it maintained? Like, how religiously was that thing maintained? Hang on just 1 second. I've got to go get a trim tool so I can pop this cluster off of here. Hang on a second. Hang on just a minute. And this is one of the reasons why whenever you're working on an older bike, you're working on a used bike, it's always a real good idea to do an initial disassembly, just to make sure that there's nothing weird going on. And when they've sat for a long time and they get a lot of dust and grit and grime, that dust, grit, and grime can get into nooks and crannies and make that disassembly tougher. So that's one of the reasons why I am in the process of doing this as well, which is what I'm finding here. Typically these clusters, the cluster will just pops right out. You don't have to get a trim tool, but if you're in the process of working on one of these things, it's good to know that you might need to get a trim tool or a gadget or something like that to get in there and pop those male-female connectors away from each other. So anyway, that is what I'm doing here. And then I will get into here. Oh yeah, it's filthy. So what I will do is bring you guys over here so you can see what I'm up against, or what I'm up to. Is that going to show up? I don't know if any of this is going to show up properly, but if you look down into here, there's just tons of dirt, dust, debris, all this stuff. I'm going to be cleaning all of that out of here. And then cleaning up down by the stabilizer. It's one of those things where you get so much grime buildup and whatever over the years. Oop, I am screwing this all up. There we go. Did that work? I think that worked. There we go. There we go. So the idea, again, is just to try to get this, we got cobwebs and stuff like that. And that's not, and this isn't any kind of this is every one of the bikes when they sit for any real length of time, you can get critter infestations too. So one of the funny things is my dad's bike had sat for years and years and years. And in South Texas, you get these things, it's a wasp, it's a mud dauber, and they build nests out of mud, basically. And they're these hard rocks, it's kind of weird. Anyway, this bike, literally I weighed it. It was 5 pounds worth of mud dauber nests. One of them actually shot out of the exhaust and went across the parking lot that way when the bike fired up for about the second or third time. So anyway, it's a real thing, and those kind of there's stuff like that you're just going to want to get in, clean it up, get it sorted out. Now, this bike's pretty clean, I got to admit. But again, you found yourself the bike of your dreams. These are the steps that you're going to have to take along the way, mainly because, well, you're doing due diligence with it, right? And you don't want to wind up with a problem that you could have fixed just, on a boring winter night that you're not going to be riding, and you got to looking for something to do anyway, right? So we're going to get in here, get this thing cleaned up, get it all sorted out. And the good thing is that, it's all being done for a good cause. We're going to be pulling these mirrors off here in just a second. Getting all the grime and grit out of here. But the main thing is, don't take for granted that everything is okay just because the bike has low mileage or, even a good service history. A lot of times, maybe that's not even good enough. You're going to still want to get in here and clean everything as best as you can. Make sure none of the rubber components have been, chipped or wallered out. Here's one for you. And this is actually kind of an important one. Where'd I put them? Here they are. So this particular motorcycle came with a set of aftermarket bar ends. Let me show you guys these things. These are going to be real familiar to any of you guys with any sport bike. But the problem is, check this out. The way that the bar ends are supposed to work, the way that the OE bar ends work, and this is in essence the same design, is that, if you can see that, this nut is actually part of a captured unit that is, see how that nut slides into, there we go, slides into that grommet, right? And it's captured with, it's a square hole going into a square peg going into a square hole. Well, here's the problem. When these were initially installed, they were way over tightened. And you go, well, how do you know that? Well, the factory bar ends use the exact same design, but I can turn this. See how that's turning? There you go. But I'm holding the rubber grommet. And the problem is it won't expand. It's been wallered out to the point where it doesn't hold tension on the actual bar. The way I found that, is that the clutch side bar end was sticking out a little bit. And I was looking at that, and I, why is that sticking out? And I went to pull on it, and it just kind of goes and pops right out. So that's not good. You never want to lose a bar end when you're riding your motorcycle, not because, there's something bad going to happen to the bike. You can ride the bike around without bar ends. This is kind of a safety thing, but for the most part, it's more of a vibration quell. But you hear that? That is heavy. And this little solid piece of metal, that's gonna cause some real damage if that hits a car or something like that. So yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. So I've got a set of OE bar ends on the way. The whole idea, even with that, part of the initial teardown, if you will, is because we've got a G2 quick throttle heading our way. So yes, this bike is going to get a G2 quick throttle like all the GSXR middleweights do. In fact, every bike that I have except for the 1000's got one. Bonneville doesn't have one, but it doesn't need one. But yeah, it's going to be nice. But we've got to get the OE parts, and that's one of the things that you run into. So again, bike looks great, super long history, but there are still some things that are going to have to be addressed, and that is certainly one of them. So I'm going to get in here, keep disassembling this whole thing, get the mirrors off, get all the dust and grime off of it, and basically she's just going to be hanging out, chilling, waiting for the rest of the parts to show up. The thing is that everything is running about, I'm going to say everything's running about 5 days behind. So if anything that I've ordered is going to be, or the project is running about a week behind because of all this weather we've been having. Check in with you guys real quick. Miki's in. John's in saying hi all. What's up, John? Getting her all pulled apart, getting her ready for all of the fun parts that are on the way. I gotta tell you, working on these Gixxers, they're you work on a few of them. It's like you've worked on one, you've worked on them all, right? It's what's nice about the 600 versus the 750 is they share pretty much all the same components. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So part of the onboarding process that I have, and I've got a video coming out. It's not all that great. This is the one that I was saying I'm debating on putting this one out. It's not a bad video. It's just not. I don't know if it would be considered one of my best works, but it's going over the onboarding process with these bikes. And the interesting thing about the GSXR 600 and 750, they do use the same, at least part number wise, they use the same forks and a different rear shock. They're all rear shocks. It uses different forks and different shocks settings for what is in essence the same components, which I find kind of curious. There we go. But all right, you got the first mirror off of there. But even though the settings are different, check this out. The 600 and the gray bike, the sag numbers were almost identical. In fact, there were only a couple of millimeters off up front, and they were identical out back. So even though initially, you know, the settings are different and all of that, they are still, they both spec out pretty close to the same. So let's see, where is this guy going? There's always one of these that has a goofy connector, and I think it's this one. This right-hand side mirror. The left one is always easy to get to. It's just the right one is a bit of a pain in the butt. There's a little clippy trying to get to. What? No, this is less than elegant. I know. Where is? There we go. Hoping I don't have to pull the whole front of this thing up there. This connector is figured out a way to get buried way up in here. There we go. Sorry, this is, it's actually kind of funny. So there's a little retainer clip up in here that is holding a couple of the different wires. and it is in just the perfect spot to be a pain in the ass. This is less than satisfying. You get it right here. Oh, and if you're doing this and you find yourself, you got to start to move things around, don't forget that this part of a procedure, you always want to be mindful of the fasteners themselves. They're all metal, and they can really be a booger if you forget that you have you've got those metal ends. You can end up scratching your finish. So keep a bunch of towels around for that. Hold up, what in the hell? Remember that whole sweat equity part? Ugh. So this is being less than cooperative. But I mean, it has been in this place for what, 13 years? There we go. There we go. We got it. We got it. Victory. Invictus. All right. Starting to look like a real motorcycle now. So at this stage, what I'll do is I'll just keep working through, getting everything cleaned up, and then as the parts start coming in, I'll start to install them. But again, it's just getting this all sorted out, making it work. And again, getting it cleaned up, putting eyes on anything that could be a potential issue later on down the line. So we got that all taken care of. That's the other thing too. They're all the same, right? Like all of these bikes are the same, but they're different. What's weird is, you know, I said that the red bike, this one, and the gray bike are practically identical in terms of rider sag settings and all that. But the blue bike is a little bit different. The blue bike was a little bit stiffer, even at factory settings. So last night I had gone through and I made sure that I didn't like misremember something. But I went through the blue bike, the gray bike, and the red bike last night, and what I did is I made sure that, you know, I had just a mental clarification that everything was set as it's supposed to be, in that the hydraulics are set exactly where they're supposed to be, even on both sides. The preload is set exactly on all the bikes the way that it's supposed to be, and I just wanted to go over, get all the measurements, and kind of get a reset, because I'm putting together all new spreadsheets and whiteboards and all that kind of stuff for the bikes. And what I found was hysterical is that the 600, the red bike, and the gray GSXR 750 were identical for practical purposes with the way that they were set up. But that this bike was still basically set up as stock, which is kind of rare. Usually guys get in there and start playing with settings and whatnot, but part of the history of this red bike is that it has had the forks serviced. So, 13 years in, a lot of times these bikes haven't been serviced in that respect at all. It's typically a fairly expensive service, and it is what I would consider realistically, because these are street bikes, right? Well, they're street bikes in name, I suppose. The way that they get ridden around here, I wouldn't necessarily call them straight up street only, because they do get hit pretty hard. But that being said, they're not really seeing track levels of use, which if you are doing track, you're going to want to service the suspension parts regularly. One of what are the costs of doing track? Any kind of track events. I mean, 1 or 2 a year isn't any big deal. I mean, to be honest with you, a couple of track days a year is probably not any different than the way a lot of guys ride their bikes on the street anyway. But in saying that, just keep in mind that you may have to get forks serviced, and that ain't cheap. Factor that in as part of your cost when you're buying a used bike. And this is part of a video that I was wanting to put together. This is one of the things that I was saying before, where, you know, a lot of times I'll try to put together a video, but it just doesn't translate well. And this is one of those things. So I was like, okay, how can I talk about all of the things that I want to try to, you know, convey? Best advice, best practices when you're buying a used bike, and it's easier for me to do it in a live platform. That way I can hang out with you guys too. Tiger's saying the red is nice. Thank you. Tell you what, I'm a big fan of the red myself. Great looking bike. Brings back some great memories for me with the red and white livery. Tell you what, the best looking bikes, 06, 7, and 8 middleweight Gixxers. Ooh, those are good looking bikes. Good grief. Getting out cobwebs and all kinds of fun stuff in here. Getting her all cleaned up and ready to go. But this is part of it, guys. This is something else I wanted to try to, I don't know, try to illustrate for you guys. This is the not so glamorous part of this, right? You know, it's fun getting the bikes out, getting them on the side of the tire, you know, coming into carousel, you know, and all that kind of stuff, right? Getting these bikes running is part of it, and that can be, I guess, somewhat interesting, I guess, but this part, when you're going through the motions, working on it, getting them cleaned up, this is the less than fun part, I guess. It's not like it's bad or anything, but it just goes to show, I mean, they don't just wake up in the morning and look beautiful, right? They definitely have to get cleaned up. And that's what we are doing with this bike here. And luckily, this is a great bike too. This one, I couldn't really have asked for a cleaner version. It's the exact bike that I wanted. It's the exact colorway that I wanted. I mean, talk about fortunate. But even still, you got to get in here. You got to put the work in. And, you know, there's going to be times where you're just going to be like, oh man, this sucks. I really don't feel like dealing with this. This, you know, 100 other things you could be doing that are infinitely more fun than this, right? But you got to do it. And a lot of times, this is the crazy thing. It's when I'm doing this kind of work on a bike or even cars or whatever it is, it's when I'm in the process of doing something like this that I find things that have got to get fixed. And, you know, I'll find that, oh wow, that wire is frayed. Oh, how weird. Or, you know, whatever the case is. I found all kinds of stuff. Loose nuts and bolts too. You'd be surprised. You know, these bikes making a lot of power, vibrations, and all this other stuff. You'll have, you know, just anything that can loosen will loosen. Loctite is your friend. So I like to get in here, and the way I see it is if I put my hands on it, I'll know that it's right. And again, you don't know until you inspect these things. I don't want to, you know, be that guy that says, oh, you got to do this once every 30 days or something like that. That's really not the case. But it needs to be done at some point. I would say, like, this is more of a pre-season inspection, cleanup, that kind of a thing. Mickey said, I'm sending you my bike for service. I'll tell you what, you get it back in really good shape. But I will, and I do have a tendency to go a little bit overboard with stuff like this. And I get it, not everybody is going to do this. I mean, techs don't do this, usually. But again, and I find a lot of, I don't want to use the word mistake, but I find a lot of oversight whenever I'm working on stuff like this. You know, stuff like, you know, again, I keep bringing this up, but hoses not being routed right, wires getting chafed, stuff like that. It's again, it's not saying that anybody did anything wrong necessarily. It's just that it's real difficult to, you know, you can't get everything right every time. I'm not making any excuses for anybody, but at the same time, I get it. So we get in here, we get her cleaned up. And right now what I'm doing is I'm just checking to make sure there's nothing loose, nothing weird. You know what the weird thing is? This is, so the biggest thing that I find with bikes in general, like what is wrong or what, you know, what goofy thing do you see the most? It's body work being put on, like in haste or whatever, like somebody's trying to just get the bike put back together and send it on its way. The blue bike, so that was a parade bike, and when they were putting it back together after a service, man, whatever dealership was tasked, it could have been anywhere on the planet really, but whatever dealership was tasked for the cleanup and the servicing for that bike, I mean, they did not give a fuck about putting it back together the right way. I had body panels underneath. There's a whole bunch of like plastic body panels that one ties into another. There was shit like overlapping. Stuff was all hair-lipped. The wrong tabs were used. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff, man. It looks like somebody was just having a really bad day and they had to get through something really quick. Probably getting paid flat rate for something. Gave it to a maintenance tech, and that guy, I don't know, he's just working for beer money. So, it's kind of funny. But, it's just the goofy stuff that you see. But yeah, whenever they sit for any real length of time, this is going to be what you're going to be living through. So, this is to be expected, really. Try not to be too liberal with the armor all over here. I just use this stuff to clean up. It's really good for cleaning up this black plastic. Getting in there, all the grub and the grit out of here. There we go. And a lot of this you can't even see, by the way. And I know that as I'm cleaning it. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? We're just going to get in here and get her all clean as best we can. And this bike, by the way, when I get done with it, it'll end up looking like it's brand new. Shit, I know some very, very new, very low mileage bikes that don't look nearly as good as this bike already. There we go. Cool. But that is what I am up to tonight in the shop on this very cold, was rainy. It's actually a really clean night. But it is chilly, and since we're waiting on parts anyway, figured I'd bring you guys along for the ride. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Appreciate y'all hanging out with me and documenting the getting this bike ready to get back on the road once we get all the parts and everything else. Looking forward to bringing it to you guys. Definitely looking forward to some ride along videos. But with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Y'all take it easy.